Good morning. We're live. We keep saying we need some better indication that we're actually live than this counter because we know it's not accurate. Anyway, welcome, umbraCoffee episode 150. We've reached 150 episodes. Marcin couldn't be here today, but I'm joined by two wonderful people, Rachel and Mike. How are you both doing?
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good stuff.
Good. That's good. Of course, it's been a pretty busy week news-wise. Maybe not Umbraco news-wise, but just global news-wise. So we'll try not to dwell on that too much. I thought it would be quite nice to start the episode with a look at something that Warren did this week, which was his little friendly Umbraco animation, doodle animation, which is good. Nice way to take your mind off maybe some of the other things going on in the world. And equally, I saw that that Jeffrey from Perplex and the Perplex team sent some lovely chocolates to Umbraco HQ as a kind of reminder that they are, they're awesome. They're doing a great job. And this was really impressive. They even managed to name every member of HQ on the to say thank you.
A lot of names, isn't it?
It's a lot of names. It's a lot. I'm sure he didn't remember all of those because I don't think anyone at HQ can remember everyone's names now. But yeah, it's nice to start the week perhaps on on some more positive notes.
Hopefully the week will end on a positive note as well.
Yeah, let's hope. And I think continuing on with that positive theme, maybe we can have a little chat about Hacktoberfest because it's now November. Crazily, I still think it's March in my head, but it's November. So Hacktoberfest, did you both manage a couple contributions?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, I managed to get two little ones in.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I also managed to get a few in this year, and surprisingly had a bit of motivation, which I often don't. So I'm glad I managed that. But a few people managed to get some accessibility ones in there too, didn't they? Did either of you do I know Rachel, you did a couple accessibility wise.
I did one that's slightly embarrassing because it was a one-line change, and I did it the day everyone was saying you shouldn't do one-line changes.
Flagged as spam.
Basically the change I've done is puts a picture on the page in the back office. So now if you're looking at the page in French, all the menu items and everything are read out in French or whatever your culture is. So yeah, embarrassing. A nice fix. I've done a few more as well.
So that lang is important for screen readers, I guess, to understand the culture that they're reading the page in.
Yeah, that's it. And it also helps in a wider outside of Umbraco context. It helps people who are using fonts, who use fonts based on the language. So you might want to switch in a different font style for non-Latin character sets.
Yes.
So it helps there, and it helps tools like Google Translate understand straight away what language the page is in. So it's got nice. If you use it outside of the back office, it's got quite a few nice other side effects. Good.
Yeah, as I spend a lot of time doing back end stuff, I feel a little bit out of date sometimes with these front end type things and best practices that I know I should know more about, but it's always great to see the kind of things that get highlighted in accessibility PRs. As I've said many times, they all just make sense, but it's things that maybe unless you were really thinking about it, you wouldn't necessarily go, yeah, I need to do that. And it's a kind of training ourselves to be doing these things by default.
Yeah.
There's so much to learn with it as well, and you need to have so many bits of knowledge from so many different areas. I mean, it's some places it could be easy, but I'd say accessibility in general is and can be very hard, especially when it's in a legacy system. And if you're not doing it every day, I mean, there's so much, things change as well. The rate that front end tech is evolving, it's never ending.
No, indeed, I struggle very much to keep up. Yeah. Okay. But so Hacktoberfest, we had a few great PRs regarding accessibility, but we also had a whole bunch of PRs to the CMS as a whole. So that's 190 with 70 merged to the core CMS, 63 to docs with 50 merged. They've done a lot of merging there. But there was a few to our and other repos as well. And I guess they're probably, the number's too small to count, but maybe someone can find that out. We just wanted to highlight a few of the awesome accessibility PRs, and they all seem to be flagged for 8.10, so they'll be coming a little bit later this year, hopefully. Rachel, you've got a few in there. Jan's got a whole bunch in there. And even Niels from HQ has been doing some of his, and even more that haven't been merged yet that have been that are in there. That looks fantastic. And I know that Joe on last week's episode was talking about how we had, I think it was the deadline last Friday, so he had 1 day left to go and get his PR in, and he managed to get an accessibility one, which is really awesome to see.
Yeah, he's still been working on that the content drop down thing as well. He's been doing a great job with that.
Yeah,
and tricky thing to solve.
It's really nice to see that people are kind of actively seeking these things out. I know Joe was saying he felt quite comfortable doing those kind of changes because it's stuff that he's done previously, whereas I would feel less comfortable doing, say, an accessibility pull request. But it's great that you get some. Who was the first time contributor? Rachel, you highlighted. Yeah. So that's again people doing like their first ever. Is it this one?
There was a couple.
Wow. And was some of the merged ones even?
There's a merged one from him, yeah.
This one?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's truly brilliant. Like someone coming in and doing their first ever PR to the CMS and it being an accessibility one. Just shows so many different ways we can be contributing. And of course, we need to give a special high five you rock to Jan. I mean, we've shouted him out a bit too many times today already, but did take Lee up on his request for help about accessibility improvements for contentment. And Jan did 2 pretty decent sized PRs to contentment, improving accessibility of swapping things for core directives, meaning that the accessibility of those can be kind of managed by core, which is amazing. So using, improving some of the overlays to use the directives, the search filter that Lee says he didn't even know existed, and swapping out for button and the icon as well, which is looking really, really awesome. So big high five you rock to Jan for his contributions.
He's relentless. It's amazing how much he gets done. It's awesome. It's really cool.
He does it to get away from, like, in his downtime, away from his kid, I think, in the evenings. Or I'm gonna hack away on something when the kid's gone to sleep. can concentrate.
Relaxation time.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. Cool. So that's the Hacktoberfest contributions we've covered. Fantastic to see some accessibility ones, but also nice broad range, over 250 odd PRs in Hacktoberfest and Umbraco projects. Even in the current climate, I think that's really impressive. So I hope you're really so what's next? This week we had a new Skrift release, didn't we? So this was Skrift issue number 67, and it's a slightly special one because for the first time in a long time, we've got two articles here are part of a series. So we started off Paul's Exploring Common Practice series, discussing different ways to tackle building different things in the CMS. So that includes this time landing pages, where him and Matthew Wise have teamed up to talk about exactly how they would tackle a brief. In this case, they're wanting to build some landing pages in their CMS. They need to have Google Analytics tracking and a bunch of things like that. And then they kind of went through, discussed what you should be looking at, how you could be looking at, and there's of course a nice repo you can go and look at afterwards. So this is Brave. Oh no, it's not. So yeah, like they've gone and built this landing page effectively. It's really cool. I think there's going to be a few more in this series. I think it was a 3-part series initially. So that will be coming in the following months. Also, another series was the Running Umbraco on Azure article from Aaron. This is, again, part 1 of 3. We'll be seeing the rest in January and February. But it's a really nice in-depth brief of how to get Umbraco up and running on Azure on a web app with a database. And I think next we'll be looking at the deployments and how you go about doing all of that. Cool. And then the final one was by someone called Mike. And this, I find this really interesting because we had a chat about this topic during the London meetup last month. And this is regarding the icon directive that you've been spending years trying to introduce to the core. You want to tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, I discussed this. I think I went over it briefly, fairly briefly, at the London meetup the beginning of October. And then I think Janae reached out asking if I could quickly write an article for it. So I said yes, and then frantically kept not doing it, and then realised I should probably write that up. But no, it was an interesting thing because as the article, if for those who haven't read it, I'll do a quick overview. So 5 years ago from around now, me and a couple of the other developers at Yo-Yo went to a conference in London, a day conference by a company called Made by Many, who run a front-end developer conference called Front End London. They have this big yearly event called Epic Fell. And at that conference, there was this developer called Sam Davis, who did a talk called Death to Icon Fonts. And up to that point, I obviously aware of accessibility, was one of those when you think you know a fair amount and then you kind of get schooled in a various number of ways. And this was one of those talks that really sort of highlighted some areas that I just wasn't aware of. Obviously, knowing about icon fonts, knowing about SVGs. Around 5 years ago, SVGs were pretty stable, but they were sort of coming out of that. They're getting more and more support among browsers.
Yeah, the issue started with SVGs being like how you could integrate them into your site, because I remember when the image tag, for example, started supporting them. You didn't have to put them in line anymore, although that's best practice. So yeah, it definitely in like recent years, it's coming on greatly, isn't it?
Yeah. And I remember after that talk, I went back and I essentially the issue was from an accessibility point of view, is that if you used a font change, if you were dyslexic, which in the case Saren was, it would replace any icon fonts with just those square blobs. Sometimes it would even, depending on the font you switch it to, it would change it for a different font entirely. So in her actual slides in a talk, she had some instances where I think like a tick would turn into a burger or something random like that. It would be really confusing, especially if you didn't have any textual context by the icon as well. So I tested out in Umbraco and found that similar things happened. Now, since
we can see that screenshot here in the post with
exactly, yeah,
block type, and it's quite surprising actually how many things in that one view were using font-based icons.
Yeah, and to quickly go over the font changing technology, over the years, obviously that has evolved and gotten better at trying not to replace icon fonts, but it's still, there's still issues for it. And there were some other great benefits to using SVGs anyway. When I got back from that conference, I did have a little check, like I said, and found the issue was there, but it was way before I'd really done any PRs or any contributions to Umbraco, and I was a bit sort of still intimidated by doing anything to it at all. So that sort of stayed in the back of my mind. When I was building sites, it was very much SVG first, going through SVG sprites that would get pulled in with the image tag, then it evolved, so it would be like a SVG sprite in the top of the page that would pick out the icons in line. And over the years, there were a few instances where we had clients that we needed to be able to add icons to the back office that were SVGs, but then render them out inline so that we could add hover states to change the colors or do anything like that. It just meant you could have CMSable icons that you could still animate, you could still do whatever you want with it. And it was after doing that, I thought we could probably have a load of code now that kind of solves the problem on the front end of the site. Could that be adapted to solve the problem on the back end? So at Code Cabin 2018, I think I'd spoken to a couple of people at Umbraco around about it, but hadn't really done much. And I think there was a bit of confusion around, was it needed? What was it actually solving? Because it's a bit of a, that icon's maybe not important for some people, or just not really sure. So I thought, right, the first thing to do, convert all the icons. So I took the icon font, found a script, and generated a big folder full of 600 plus SVG icons. I had to do some stuff to rename them, and I think MapWise actually helped with that. And then it sort of sat there. I had all the icons there. I put I don't know, maybe a few hours trying to work something out, and sort of got stuck. A few months later, I actually managed to try and get something working. The issue I was having originally was the difference between the project where I had it on the front end and for doing it in a CMS open source Umbraco is that anyone could add their own SVG, right? If someone went in and added some malicious code to that SVG, and it's being played in line, that could cause some serious issues. So I needed a way to sanitize any of the code. So I managed to find a package called HTML Sanitizer. It's fairly well maintained, fairly well used. We get package. The issue I had to begin with was I didn't know how to add it to the Umbraco back office. I needed Seb to help me out with that however many years ago. And then it was just a case of going through and updating all the icons. So there are actually two versions of this pull request. The first one, I kind of did it roughly, and I went through every single icon that used the I element and updated that to the new icon font, which resulted in a pull request that was so big that you probably need a team of about 20 people just to go through it. And I submitted that a few years ago and sort of sat and hoped, maybe it'll come through, and it was just not going to happen. So I'd start again from scratch. Actually, I took a few bits of code, but most of it was completely rewritten. And a lot of the issues originally came from the icon picker. So that kept changing the way it was saving icons. So there were a few back and forth where I broke code, then I had to fix code. But ultimately, what I ended up with was a solution where in the Umbraco folder, there is another folder full of all the individual SVG icons with the naming convention of icon dash the name of the icon. That then there's two endpoints at the back end, one that you can use to get a single icon, and one that you can use to get a list of all the icons. And each one of those runs a sanitizer against each icon. It's surprisingly very quick, even if it gets all of them. Like all the icons, say 600 plus, it does it in milliseconds.
And that goes in and just checks that it's valid XML, I guess, not without script tags or anything dodgy in there.
If it finds script tags, it'll strip them out.
Oh, okay. So it's not just validating and throwing it out, it's actually cleaning up whatever data.
Exactly. So the way I had to do that was the HTML Sanitizer package was only for HTML. So I ended up going to NDM and W3C and various other places for the spec for SVGs and pass and all the different attributes that live in an SVG, and I had to manually create an allow list for all of the different attributes that should be allowed, and just excluded the script tag. And then, so that was a really nice thing with this HTML Sanitizer thing, is it was really easy to extend. So that's actually what happens, and that's sort of built into the back office now. So that handles all that. We know that they're safe. Then to render them out in the front end, this was the tricky thing. So I actually looked at the GitHub article. So again, jumping back, the talk that Seren did actually encouraged GitHub to move away from icon fonts to SVGs about 4 years ago now, which I think you had that.
Yeah, that's this article here, isn't it? Which is fantastic. It's great at exemplifying why.
Yeah, and this is really, really helpful to actually guide me how, because I sort of thought, what's going to be the best way to do this, and it essentially came up in the same concept as them, as it can't be an image tag because you won't be able to change the color of them. We don't want to have an SVG sprite because that would be absolutely massive. So we want to be a bit more responsive. And again, you couldn't do that from an image tag. You could have it at the front, at the top of the page, the DOM, but again, that's a big file and it would just clog up the DOM. So the individual SVG inline approach would have to be done, which is a bit tricky. In order to do it, created this new icon, this new directive, which is the icon directive, which you pass in the name of the icon you want. And what that will do behind the scenes is it will use the icon service to request the actual SVG version of that icon. If it exists, it will pass back the model of part of it will have the SVG string, the other will have the name of it. If it can't find the SVG, it will then look for the icon fonts, because this has to support all the legacy stuff. So
a load of packages, for example, will still use the old convention.
Yeah. So it will then essentially, if it finds the SVG, it will render that out. If it doesn't, it will use the icon font. And it will do that lazily as well. So we're using the intersection observer. So for any people who don't know what that is, it's essentially, it will fire an event when a element is within view of the screen up to a certain point. You can configure that. So at the moment it's set to, if it's within 100 pixels of being visible on the screen, it will load the SVG icon onto the DOM.
Oh, nice. So that's actually efficiency is also being considered now, rather than before, where the whole font was being loaded on load of the back office. You're actually lazy loading those icons when they come into view.
Yeah, and I want to be clear on something. This icon fonts are smaller in file size. That just the way that they have their the way the system works on icon font, it does mean the file is smaller. The individual SVGs as a whole are bigger in size, which is why this lazy load was important. But again, it's not just the file size that you've got to consider. It is the accessibility issues, the the customizability of it all. So long and short of it is, you can now, all the icons that appear in the icon folder use SVG icons where they can, and if they can't, they'll use icon fonts.
Awesome.
The first PR I did, the second PR I did, only did it in the icon picker and a few other areas that were directly relevant to that. It didn't do the rest of the site. And I know that Rachel's already gone ahead and started updating some areas that were using the old I element to the icon font. The two PRs I did for October were around the icon, either doing some performance improvements or doing some updates from the old version to the new.
So is it safe to say that there's a bit of a call to action there of someone to go through and in kind of digestible and reviewable chunks, update some of those references to iTag with a class of icon dash something, and update those to use the new directive?
Exactly, yeah. And the for anyone who wants to read a bit more about the configuration for it, I added a load of inline documentation to the script, which has been obviously, it gets generated by the UI documentation. So it is documented in there if you want to use it in your own packages as well.
Brilliant.
One thing that Soren's been working on, and there's still a few bits I think need to be done. I haven't looked at it recently, but it's very close to being done, is adding the ability to add your own SVG icon. So that was one of the other benefits of this new SVG icon approach, was with this PR, in the packages section, you can create a new package. I think we still need to work out a convention for where the icon should live. But it means that if you want to add your own ones, you just drop in a single SVG icon into your package, and it will pull through automatically. Again, this isn't in there yet. It's one of the things that's coming. But I know that some clients like to. One of the great things about Umbraco is its extensibility. You can do a lot with it, and this just adds to that level of customization, which is pretty sweet.
Awesome. So it's great to see the community also getting behind this now. I noticed on your Skrift article you shout out 6 or 7 different people who've been involved in this over the the few years. And like you said, this is actually a 5-year journey, really, back in 2015, attending that talk right up to the point where the PR got merged earlier this year, and it's in 8.8. Is that right? 8.8?
Yes, I think that's the one. Yeah, 8.8 is when it was added. But yeah, there's so many people out there. Like Biana at the end really helped to get it just over the line. I think it was at the Hacktoberfest last year at the UK festival that I got it pretty much all the way there, and that was when Sebastian said, we need to make sure it really supports all the legacy icons, which I kind of accounted for, but it hadn't quite worked. So I was updating that to work. The amount of help I had for that was fantastic, and then obviously all the packages as well. So there was a lot of help from a lot of people. Even though I may have started it, it's very much been a team effort. If there was a team, and it's been really cool seeing it sort of evolve into something that's beyond what I've done, and just sort of get picked up by loads of people and running with it. There's a lot of things that we can do to take it further. Like the custom, ability to add your own icons, the ability to, maybe render out the SVG icons in the front end should you want to. That could be an option. There's also, Matt Wise back at that Code Cabin 2018. He did a PR for a service worker at the back office to help with caching.
That's one of those other PRs that's been around, 3 years.
We actually had a little chat about it. I was out the other day, and he was saying, should I close it? And I was like, it still looks like a solid PR. I think it might be a bit.
I know that Philip has expressed interest in getting service workers into the back office at some point as well. And from a performance point of view, it would be great for this because you could cache the somewhere.
At the moment, the one of the things that the back office API to get the icons is restricted just to the back office as well. I know that they needed to get the icons working their login page. So I can't remember who it was at HQ did some work to make it possible to request an icon and cache it by the back end code so it will appear on the front end just for specific icons. So there's some odd little bits of work being done around that. But it's
very cool.
I'm happy to find the end.
Very cool. Well, that's fantastic. And like you say, benefits for accessibility, but also benefits for reusability of the CMS, extensibility of the CMS, a whole bunch of benefits that help everyone here. So
animated.
Moreover, a nice refactor, I would say, because rather than having this same bit of markup repeated everywhere across the CMS with a CSS class attached to it, well, the CSS class is in one place now, which is lovely.
Yeah, and it's consistent as well. There are some places where it was used, the icon was on an I element, which the I element isn't meant to be used for that anyway, but it just was picked up. There's somewhere it's used on spans, somewhere it's used on, so it's trying to get it consistent. As Jeffrey pointed out at the DF, which I hadn't even thought about, you can have multicolored SVG icons now if you wanted. Animated. So there's a lot of interesting stuff you could do.
Good fun. Well, that's really awesome, and great to see that finally get in there. I'm sure I raised a conversation about how we could go a bit further with these as well.
Yeah.
I know that I think the community will have some interest in evolving this as well. So great work there. And whilst we're on the topic of accessibility, which of course, Rachel, you're here too, and you do a lot of work with accessibility. You're both part of the accessibility team, but your company Sigma also does a hell of a lot of stuff with accessibility. And you are joining a partnership with a whole bunch of other companies and some CMS providers. Is that right?
Yeah, this is true. So we are part of the We4 Authors cluster. It's funded by the EU, and it's a group of content management systems of working together to help produce more accessible content management systems help authors produce more accessible content. So we're involved in the project Drupal, Site Vision, Plone, and Joomla, as well as ourselves, and it's being project managed by Funker. And it stems. Funker did a pilot project where they looked at how accessible the content that content authors were creating was from any content management system. And it was against public sector websites in the EU, because we've just had the EU directive about making public sector websites WCAG 2.1 AA compliant. So it came from the back of that, and they found that content authors weren't creating a lot of accessible content. So the concept is that the content management systems help them better. And we're looking at ways of doing that. Because we as developers, right, we'll build a system, we'll implement a system to be as accessible as possible. So we'll have thought about branding, interactions, and all that kind of thing. And then you'll train up the author who's going to use it, and show them how to use the system and tell them how to make it accessible. But with the greatest of will in the world, they'll forget, or they'll move on to another job and someone else will take it on. So we'll all start off with a brilliant accessible system, but it can degrade over time. So Funko have looked at different features, and they've picked out 10 features that we're going to test, and they've been running them past everyone who's involved, and we've been working together to do some prototypes. So we're at the point now where we want to test those prototypes. So if it'd be great if people could get in touch and help test them. I can show a couple if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do that. So just to be clear here, this is what you're trying to do. I don't know why I was big on the screen there for some reason. Sorry. So what you're trying to do here is you're trying to come up with some kind of things that every CMS should have in their WYSIWYG editor or their editing experience to encourage people to create accessible content.
And to help support them validate it as well. So, yeah, it's a complete, because it's EU funded, it's completely transparent. So the outputs will be some guidelines for content management systems, and then it's up to each content management system to follow those guidelines if they want to. So yes, we're exploring the concepts. So some of the concepts include alt text, how to do help text, explain to people why they've got to put in valid content, and other concepts around testing the content. So yeah, I will just demo, like I said. So a couple of the tests are A/B testing. So we mentioned language at the start of our coffee today. And one of the things about language, like I said, is it's good to have it said in the language that you've designed it for. But sometimes we may switch language partway through our content. So one of the things that we're testing is the best way to do this. So this is Xure, and it's testing TinyMCE concept. I'm not saying this will be in TinyMCE, but this is the concept. So someone would come in, they would highlight the different language, and they would select the language it's in. And what that would do is, so I think I've been sat here for too long. What that would do is then put a span tag around it in the HTML, and then this is showing. So that's how it would know on the front end that the language is different, and in the back office, testing ways of how we're telling people that the language has been changed. So here it's got the culture for Sweden, Swedish.
So say quoted text, for example, this would be really helpful, and it helps identify to screen readers or whatever on the front end that you're switching language for this one sentence from the default of the page.
Yes, absolutely. And then, like we talked about before, we can style it up differently as well for that language on the front end. So there's massive benefits there. So once you've done the test, you'll be taken to a survey to fill in as well. And then another example of the test is the testing the content in the editor. So here it's showing, if you click on that, how you may be told that you've got the wrong structure on the page. So for example, every page should have a heading 1, and then if you're going to put a subheading in, it should be heading 2 and then heading 3. And it explains why that's important, as well as telling you about the error. So these are just a couple of the examples around it. It is important to note that the prototypes are CMS agnostic. So if someone from Umbraco was testing it, they might say, well, we've already got something like this. So it is CMS agnostic, and we know that Nathan Wolf's done the pre-flight checker, and Owen Jones from Method 4 in Wales, not to be confused with Owen Williams in Scotland. He's done a Flash reading score plugin as well that runs against each property. So we know that there are people also in the community looking at
But I
this.
guess this is also things that we can feed back into the project. So other CMSs here can take benefit from maybe the work that other people have done. You can go, okay, here's the guidelines. Well, actually, Joomla does this really well, so maybe we should follow Joomla, or Umbraco's got some great solutions for that. And
yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, we were showing them Nathan's pre-flight checker and how that plugs in, how alt text is done in Umbraco as well. So we've shown them how we've done things, and that's
very cool. And so these surveys will of course have links down below for people to go and take part, and they can do these tests and provide, well, then answer some questions about the experience. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it. So we're still finalizing the prototypes. We've got a so there is, if I can just pull it across, there is the accessibility cluster where you can read more about it, and there's links on here to help sign up as well in the page if you want to sign up that way, or you're more than welcome to reach out on Twitter.
Great. And so who's the target for this? Is this for CMS editors or developers and people working within the CMS, or both? Anyone?
It's so the cluster's aimed at public sector authors, but obviously what benefits the public sector helps everyone. And the target is authors, yes, people who would be interested in the content. But obviously, if you work with the CMS, yeah, and you've got some thoughts, that'd be lovely. And it's not just Umbraco. The testing here isn't just for Umbraco; it's for any content management system as well. So
I guess call to action for anyone watching: go and if you've got public sector clients, go and share this with them. Ask them to participate, take part in the tests, and fill in the surveys and give feedback, because it can help a whole bunch of other CMSs and create these fantastic guidelines in future.
Yes, thank you.
Lovely. And Lee's celebrating in the chat as well, saying this looks fantastic. And I agree. I hadn't, to be honest, this has highlighted to me a few things that I didn't even realize were considerations, like even the highlighting a language. And it's made me think a bit differently about how I architect some of my sites now as well. So really, really great. I look forward to seeing this. What's the kind of expected time frame on guidelines?
So it started in March this year, and time frame is double check. I think it's August next year for the deliverables. Okay. Oh, sorry, July next year.
So by mid next year, we'll have a nice set of guidelines that we can kind of get busy integrating to Umbraco even.
Yes.
Lovely. Fantastic. Well, that's really good. As Lee said, inspiring, exciting. It's great to see that accessibility is becoming far more, the awareness of web accessibility is becoming far more present. So that's really awesome. But to wrap up then quickly, I'll go through some little bits of news from this week. So we had a new release. Matthew Hart has got a really helpful tool, IAS Builder. It's a PowerShell script that helps you set up an IAS site and a self-signed certificate and everything for local solutions. And he's released 1.3, which has a path argument, so you can pass in any path to a project and it will do it all for you, which is great. Wednesday, they had the Aarhus meetup with a demo of GraphQL, some talk about Cypress as well from Bjarke. I didn't attend and it was in Danish, but if anyone in the chat went, let us know how it was. Yesterday was also the Umbraco Leeds meetup, where I did a demo of my sidecar project and then was coerced into doing a demo of something else I've been working on as well. So it was good fun. We had some great chats, went on a bit late as well, but some really good conversations. Nice to catch up with the Leeds crew. Next week, more shameless plugs. We've got the Umbraco London meetup, and it's our final open space discussions of the year. We'll be talking about versioning, personalization, analytics, and a whole lot more. You can join us on Thursday on Zoom. Should be good fun. These topics we've handpicked based on what the community's been talking about recently. So we think that there's something in this for everyone, whether you're a developer or maybe a technical manager or managing director of a company. We think this will be good for you. So yeah, Thursday if you'd like to join. Also on Thursday next week, or I think Tuesday to Thursday or Wednesday to Friday, can't quite remember, is .NET Conf. And of course, we should all be going and supporting Carol and Pornima, who are going to be doing talks there on the 12th. They'll be talking about Blazor at various points throughout the day. Both great speakers, it's well worth a watch. But also .NET 5. This is the successor to .NET Core. .NET 5 launches on day 1 of the event, and there'll be some really nice deep dive talks about .NET 5. So it's a completely free online event. If you want to learn more about that, go sign up. It should be good fun. The following week, Edinburgh. Pornima's doing a talk, as am I. We're going to show off some stuff about Vendor, which should be good fun. Norway, later in the same week. Some info still to be announced. And the virtual umbraCoffee meetup at the end of November, where I'll be doing a talk about search. Final 3 things. Ingrid Van Beek has been featured as this month's uProfile. And I really like these, and I'm really liking the fact that in the past few years, these have become maybe lesser known people in the community being featured. It's a great way to get to know people. And I got to meet Ingrid at DukeFest. It was lovely to see her. I'm sure she'll be on umbraCoffee at some point in the near future. And Arnold shared a lovely write-up of DukeFest as well from the previous, start of October now, sharing some of the love about the event, a little bit about the setup and how it was made possible, and also some tips. I mean, look at that massive list of speakers as well, including yourself, Rachel. There's also some tips for if you'd like to organize your own online event and how to get started with those. So well worth a read. And the final note I wanted to end on, which is kind of a blast from the past, reminiscing. Last 3 years ago, Carol shares her photos of the runners in running around London, and yeah, I have to say it did make me a little bit sad that there's no events like this happening. Some really fantastic photos, some great memories there too. So yeah, that's it for the news this week.
That was awesome. Thanks, Callum. That's a lot of news.
45 minutes. But yeah, this has been really good. Thank you both for joining. Do you have anything else you'd like to add, share?
No, miss you all. Miss all of you Umbraco friends. Looking forward to all this being over. Stay safe.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, we're locked down again in the UK now, so I guess we're a little bit more restricted in seeing people and anything for a while. But hopefully, we'll be out of it before we know it, and more in-person events. Can't wait for that. This whole year's been a bit of a write-off for me. Anyway, cool. Have a great weekend, both of you. Thanks for joining. Everyone watching, have a great weekend. Make sure to like, subscribe, smash the like button, do whatever YouTubers tell you to do. I don't know. But please share this. If you've enjoyed this, put a comment, like it, share it on Twitter or with your colleagues, because I think we've talked about a lot of things today that are very interesting. So it would be great to spread some of the accessibility love. Make accessibility great always, as the cool. Have an amazing weekend, everyone, and see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.